the good, the better, and the ugly. These are the three impressions we got from China as it relates to the autonomous electric car market. At Launch Capital Partners, we're highly invested in NVIDIA and Tesla, so we have exposure to the electric autonomous car market, or more generally into robotics. And the purpose of the trip to China was, as I said in the first part of our China discussion, already published, please check the episode. But what we said there is that we went to China to really understand how the modern tech scene lives, works, and plays. That was the key. So we didn't particularly want to learn about certain industries or anything like that, or even worse, try to understand where they stand relative to the US, none of that stuff. Of course, we can see some of that just by being there, but the goal was really to have a cultural understanding of how they work, how they play, what their aspirations are. Is China really there in terms of catching up with the US culturally, not just with DeepSeek or something like that? I mean, we all know that they have the know-how, the science, the people are there, but the culture and the mindset, is it there? And the answer is no, it's not there at all. Actually, most people in China still want to go work in the US, and partly because what we call the clutter design of China. So there's a certain culture of design and lifestyle that is just not very appealing to young tech people. And I think that's the mindset that the US has to protect. It's the US's to lose. But let's get back to the good, the better, and the ugly. So the car market in China, the electric autonomous car market, is dominant. China is building massive capacity. They will dominate the market. And Tesla is a big player in that market. So that's number one. Number two, Tesla has a huge advantage by actually being the only company which has a local Chinese presence, which will compete in China and win in China, and also be able to export globally, at least in the short run, on the high end. So that is something that we see happening, and therefore that's a big advantage. And then the ugly is the overcapacity in China that Tesla has to weather. This is not even on podcast. It's November 12, 2025. This is Krim Delco. For the year, we're up 15.2%. The market's up 16.2%. We're underperforming by 1%. So what's the good? The good is that China is moving, electrifying the transportation. You stand on a crossing in Beijing or Shanghai and you barely hear noise. It's electric. The scooters are electric. The cars are electric. Came back to the US, it feels like you're back in time. This is something China is ahead of, and this is the future because it's just much better, much more efficient. And no matter what Trump is saying, the US cannot stall the development of electric autonomous cars. This will happen. So we will not just have noiseless street, but also driverless street. So China is a leader in that, and the good is that Tesla is a player in that market. So Tesla is competing. Yes, there's competition. Maybe the sales are not as good as we thought, but overall, Tesla's doing fine. They have a market to play in, and that's the better, which is there's actually a niche for Tesla to play. Now, they started with a niche. They were the first electric car company that made a car that actually people want to buy. Now there's a lot more options, but there's still only one car company which does not offer Chinese clutter design, and that is Tesla. And that's, it's changing. Xiaomi is catching up, but there's enough place there. The market's big enough. There is millions and millions of cars to be produced and sold. So there's still the opportunity for Tesla to dominate this market in their niche. Again, in their niche, one of the contacts that we have in China told us that the focus of Tesla, or the Tesla customer, is the Apple enthusiast. And that's, in our opinion, that is the most important comment that we got, at least from a business side, on this trip. So there's a certain market for Apple enthusiasts, which we translate into people who are interested in Western slick design and not Chinese clutter design, with all the other stuff, the performance and all that other stuff that Tesla is delivering, that others are also delivering. But Tesla has this edge, and therefore this market that they can play in, and have a 20% market share in China, 20% market share there's about 30 million cars being sold in China by the end of the decade, and 20% of, let's say 80% electrics, that's 24 million cars, 20%, that would still be about 5 million cars. So we have the opportunity to go from 800,000-900,000 to 5 million. There's enough room there. Even though there's a lot of competition, we think that Tesla has the opportunity to push and grow in China. The better is that not just has Tesla the opportunity to play in China, but they're also the only player which will edge itself out in the future car market of the world, which is China, and then be able to sell globally. Tesla has a global brand. It has a global acceptance. It has a huge first mover advantage when it comes to trust and prestige and so for markets like Australia and Europe and Middle East and the US and all these other big markets in the world. Tesla has this huge presence and therefore is the only company which is what we call China native global sales. China native global sales. None of the other companies has that. They're all trying. They will get there sooner or later. But Tesla has this ability to be a global company, has a global brand, global service, global software, everything global. The Chinese are very good at developing a China-based global software and AI ecosystem. But Tesla has the ability, like most other companies in the US, most other US-based AI companies, US-based software companies, you edge yourself out in the US and you go global. Now, this is the first time where you edge yourself out in China and you go global. And this is very unique to Tesla because the manufacturing base is in China, but the software base is in Silicon Valley. So this combination is very unique. The only other company which has a similar aspect to it is NVIDIA, but NVIDIA is a very special case, and they're not really a manufacturing company. So therefore, we would say that NVIDIA is not exactly in the same realm, but Tesla is the only company which combines native manufacturing in China with global software presence from Silicon Valley. David Sachs, the tech czar of Donald Trump, said something very interesting in one of his recent interviews with A16Z. He said that the Chinese want to build a global manufacturing base and commoditize software. That's because they're very good at manufacturing and they're not very good at globalizing software, so they want to commoditize software. What Tesla has is the Chinese manufacturing base with the know-how to compete in China. That's important. It's not just having a cheap supply chain and sell to the world. It is also to be able to compete in China. That's very, very difficult because the Chinese will dominate the car market in the future. Not because they're better, it's because the others don't want to do what the Chinese are doing, which is build an electric autonomous car. The Chinese are doing it. Tesla, of course, is doing it. And they will edge themselves out within the Chinese market and have the global presence through the software and the AI stack. So this is the better. The ugly is the overcapacity, and that's something that, Economics 101 will tell you there's a problem. Now, the overcapacity in China is, in our opinion, driven by two factors. One, it's just general overbuilt because you have this new, autonomous electric car industry. Everybody wants to be a winner, so there's obviously a few players that overbuild, and those things adjust. But more importantly, we have also a local Chinese playbook, which is the provinces all want to have their own car market, and therefore they're subsidizing their players. And that's, of course, on the one hand, it's a good thing because subsidized players never survive. But the bad thing is, of course, in the meantime, Tesla will have to weather the storm. So that's the ugly. But I want to get back to the better, because that's really the bull thesis for Tesla going forward is native Chinese manufacturing, global Silicon Valley software. This combination is very unique. That is the unfair advantage that Tesla has. That's why Tesla will win long term. That's why Elon Musk has the $1 trillion pay package, and he will succeed because nobody else has the ability to produce and compete in China and sell a global software suite. Only Tesla has that. At least for now. Things could change, but right now, that's where we stand. We said that in the previous episode about Kunle's comments about Google and the TPU. Like, you might think that right now that, companies like Xiaomi or XPeng will win, but that's not what's going to happen because they have the manufacturing base, and the Chinese will try to commoditize software, and they will commoditize software the same way Android commoditized software for phones, but nobody's making money in that market. It's just a second player to Apple, which is making all the money in the smartphone market. And very similar, we see the Tesla playbook here. Because Tesla, again, they will have the car and the manufacturing base and the supply chain, and they will have the global software suite. I think on top of that, you can add that the self-drive technology of Tesla has won. They are better at driving, full self-driving, that the sensor suite and all that stuff that the others are, including the Chinese players like Huawei, and then Pony and WeRide, and the only ones who aren't actually are the copycats like Xpeng and Xiaomi. Where they got their FSD from, let's leave that open for now. It feels very much like the Tesla FSD, so let's leave that just out there. I don't want to discuss that further. But again, the fundamental bull case for Tesla, the better, is native Chinese supply and competitive supply chain and competitive edge in China with global distribution, global application of their software and AI suite. Nobody else can do that. Thank you.